future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
The views and
Who was that masked man? Hey, greetings and salutations, everyone. You have tuned into none other than Dr. Judy, WTF. What the Freud? And today we're continuing our series on What the Film. And I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and of course, Dr. Judy, the world-renowned, worldwide therapist who is now an official therapist on 5 continents. There's only 7, Doctor. So, and we really do appreciate all the letters, cards, comments, messages, likes, and everything else. You can find us on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and of course, YouTube, and here at UBN, Universal Broadcasting Radio Network. And we have a letter we're going to start with as an aha moment from last week's show, which we're continuing on Gaslighting, the movie as well as the issue. And as Dr. G likes to say, we are going to turn down the gas.
And turn up the light.
Yes, on Gaslighting.
Yes.
And we're going to have a Shrink That Tune at the end with an Alanis Morissette song. It's going to be quite a loaded one. It'll be a fun one to do. So please don't leave town. But we had a really interesting letter from a listener that wrote Dr. Judy, and very quickly, and what was his name? Can we say his name?
We'll just call him Mike.
Mike, okay. Dr. Judy, I was enlightened by your program on gaslighting this week, which was, of course, last week, and if you missed it, check it out. Now I understand why my dad, who suffered from depression, who wanted me to be a doctor. It was desperate to dedicate my life to healing and hiding his condition. Mom wanted me to be a surrogate, so she mixed the empty nest syndrome with adult surrogacy. Geez, talk about doing a number on a little kid. This is just a tremendous aha moment of understanding. So thanks so much for writing and listening and commenting, and we really appreciate it, and I'm glad you had aha moments. Stay tuned, and you probably get a few more as more and more people are finding our show and having the same.
I've got to tell you that when I do this work, when the team does this work, and you too, Walt, and I just can't get my brain started without your saying greetings and salutations.
That's my trademark.
That's my cue to kick it in. I just want to say that it's amazing when we put something out there and then people think about it and then they have their own aha experiences. And so, Michael, thank you for writing this to me, because what I want to really illustrate by your example, by your aha experience, is that sometimes what parents do is they keep their children dependent so that their children don't leave the nest for their own agenda, which is a kind of a gaslighting situation in and of itself, because the definition of gaslighting is there's an agenda behind it to make somebody feel crazy so that they can comply with the agenda of the person. And so in this case, Michael, you're alluding to the fact that your family of origin kind of set up the pieces so that you can feel horrible if you establish your own independence and then leave the nest. And so when parents create that dynamic, the agenda behind it is that they themselves they may have, let's say, abandonment issues, or they want to triangulate the child into the family system to save the marriage, but nevertheless there's an agenda behind it. And so they'll make their own children feel crazy for wanting to leave, to draw them back into the system, to keep their own psychological sanity, and so their children are part of bolstering that all up. So, there are a lot of elements to gaslighting, and we alluded to the film Gaslight, which was filmed in the 1940s.
It was 1944. And by the way, this is a call-in show. And if you want to join in the conversation, please feel free. The number is area code 323-843-2826. That's 323-843-2826. And internationally, you can reach on Skype on UBN for Universal Broadcasting Network, UBN Radio number 2.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the mind map and a little bit about the wounds of childhood and how they encode into the fiber of our being. So what happens let me know when you have the mind map up so I can
And those of you who aren't,
talk about it.
Let's see where to go. Here it is.
Thank you.
Those of you who are listening, you can actually go to drjudywtf.com and find it.
So thank you. It's up there. Okay, so the mind map is a system of healing. It's also a system of tracking childhood wounds, how they embed, and how they cause chaos, defenses, and breakdowns in us.
And we have a call.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
We love to be interrupted by that.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Hey, if you could turn down your computer. Again, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy and Walt. Thanks for calling.
Awesome. Nice to talk with you guys tonight.
Thank you for calling in.
Your name?
My name is Stephanie from Arkansas, the runner.
Hi,
Hey, Stephanie. Oh, yes, we used you last week. Thanks for listening to us as you saunter through the woods and jog through the woods.
That's right.
Is that you? The Arkansas running through the woods of Arkansas?
We love
Right.
We love
That's
it.
very amusing,
We
you know.
loved
I like your sense of humor.
Well, I had a therapist once say, "Do you emote when you run?" And I thought, I'm a pretty intelligent person. I have no idea what they're talking about. And he said, process your emotions. And I said, of course. Why would anybody else do such a thing as run all the time if you're not processing your emotions?
So tell me what incentivized you to pick up the phone tonight and
Get on the couch.
And get on the couch.
Yeah. So I wanted just to share my gaslighting experience, and I listened to the show last week and I missed it. But I grew up in Southern California in a very affluent and politically influential family, and I was my stepfather was not a good guy, and I was molested over a period of 4 years as a child.
By him?
And he used yes.
Yeah.
And from the time about 9 to about 13. And he used all sorts of gaslighting techniques and manipulation and lying and all of that to control me. And one of the things that he would tell me if I would say, that hurts me, or I don't think what you're doing is right, he'd say, no, you don't understand. Our relationship is very special and it's unique, and nobody would understand if you told anybody. So it's our little secret, and your mom and your father really don't love you the way that I do. And that's why we have this special relationship. You wouldn't want to ruin that, would you?
Oh, you wouldn't, would you?
Really, really scary. And I remember another time, later when I was starting to, I was, I guess, 14 or 15 years old. I confronted him about all of it when I was 13.
Okay.
And I said, if you don't stop coming into my room at night, I'm going to go to the newspapers, because I knew that would be not a good thing to do.
That is so awesome that you did that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And I don't really have any explanation for why I had the guts to do that, other than I was afraid I was going to get pregnant, was the reality. And so when I was about 14 or 15, I had a boyfriend over, somebody you're starting to figure out how to date and stuff. And he would just humiliate me in front of this guy. He called me, the guy showed up at the house to pick me up, and he called up to the stairs and he goes, "Stephanie, Superfly is here," right in front of this guy. It was just so humiliating and embarrassing to me. And later I said, that was really embarrassing to me. Why did you do that? And he said, "Oh, you're just way too sensitive.
Oh,
You
there you
just
go.
take everything to heart."
Okay, so do you see the agenda here? He has an agenda.
Totally. Oh, yeah.
And so what he's doing in this entire scenario is making you crazy. So as I like to say, we're not crazy, we're made crazy. And unfortunately, when we're young, we buy into what our families tell us is the right thing to do. So in this case, he was your stepfather. Okay, so he had power and authority, and you figured he was maybe out for your best interest. You didn't know until you knew, until you really got clear on the fact that he's pretty crazy and he's very manipulative, and whatever it is that he's up to is just not in your best interest, and it's in his best interest. But it's very difficult for a child to figure that all out immediately. So it took for you to be how old? 13, 14?
Oh, my gosh.
Right?
Well, I mean, that's when I finally confronted him. We're on an airplane, and I just said, what you're doing to me is not right. And again, he told me I was confused. I didn't understand what real love was, and that he really cared about me, and that he was teaching me about sex so that I could have a successful marriage someday, and that he was the one who loved me because nobody else was teaching me about it the way that he was.
Okay, question. Where was your mother in all of this?
She, we were in a highly politically influential family. I mean, I was tripped around the California legislature like a Barbie doll, and the White House and everything. So she was just she didn't want to acknowledge any of it, and kind of stuck her head in the sand because she didn't want her life to blow up.
Did you ever go to her? Did you ever go to her and say, your husband is abusing me? Did you ever hint it or say it or any of that?
We didn't talk about that until I was about 21. And, at the time she, when I did finally have a conversation with her about it, she did acknowledge knowing about it. And she said, well, I found the letters that you wrote to so-and-so about this, and I just thought that you were lying in the letters so that you could trap me into the fact that I was intercepting your mail. That's how she twisted it in her head.
Again, there's a kind of an indirect gaslighting in that she had an agenda. She didn't want to break up with this guy for whatever political, financial reasons. So here it is again. You get thrown under the bus for the agenda.
Right.
You're made crazy. You buy into it until you don't. And then when you start waking up and start threatening the system and call the, I love this story, The Emperor Has No Clothes. Remember that little Grimm's fairy tale story? The story goes, for those of you who are not familiar with the story, it's about an emperor who struts around the city, and the entire city or village is saying, wow, look at the crowns, look at the jewels, look at the beautiful purple fur coat that the emperor is wearing. And it's all an illusion because, in fact,
he's stark naked. And everything is just a made-up fact or made-up fiction. And there's one little boy who we'll call the truth sayer, and he says, but the emperor has no clothes. And the village is going, shh, don't say anything about this. So they're in denial. The little boy sees the truth. And the emperor, of course, doesn't want the truth to be known because that'll ruin his game. So it's kind of like that. So you're the truth sayer. You're that little child that says, the truth is that your husband is molesting me. The truth is this guy is a pig, and start craving disgusting. And so you're calling it, and then he tries to twist it on you because he still thinks he has this adult power over you, and it's not going to work. So I think it's amazing that you found it within your clear head, your clear-sightedness to call the truth. And it's sad that your mother never, even though she knew it, she didn't have your back, and clearly your stepfather had an agenda. Thank you. That's an excellent example of gaslighting, because there's the agenda, right? And there's the making you crazy, and there's you buying into it for a little bit and then waking up. And then the sad part is that your mother's part of this crazy making system too, so she's just putting more gas to the gaslighting.
and I'm so glad you're waking up and that you're not blindsided by any of this anymore. And that's
the amazing part is within about a year after I confronted him, they shipped me off to Oklahoma at 14, and I lived by myself on a farm because they wanted me away from all of this. I mean, I'd always wanted to go and live there at our family farm, but I was probably 40 before I figured out why I wanted to go live by myself at 14 in Oklahoma.
Well, how brilliant of them. They wanted to ship the truth off, just go away,
did.
truth, go away.
And you've made it as far as from Oklahoma to Arkansas.
And the fact that they all allowed that was, I look back on that and it's like, I can't imagine letting one of my kids at that age be completely unsupervised at 14.
Well, that's because you have empathy, and that's because you care more about your children than protecting a lie that has an agenda behind it. And so, being that this episode is about narcissism and gaslighting, can you see the narcissistic aspect of this in that
totally. And I went off and married a narcissist that I've just had the most heinous experience with. The way you characterize the narcissist and how they turn on you and they use the children as weapons against you.
Yes.
The whole thing that happened in my childhood set me up for that.
Yes.
It's had a massive impact on my life.
This is such an epidemic, and Walt, remind me, and audience, remind me, I want to do an episode. I had a letter today from a father whose soon-to-be ex-wife is turning the children against him, and so it's really, really sad when children become the flying monkeys of the parent. And it's another form of gaslighting, really making the child crazy with the agenda of demeaning, devaluing, and destroying the other parent, except that in this case you're using your own children as pawns to do your dirty work, your dirty bidding. And so I think everyone hopefully listening is beginning to understand that our wounds of childhood, which there are 5 of, there's emotional, physical, sexual abuse, and then there is neglect, and then there is smothering. And we don't escape childhood unscathed. And sometimes what happens is that we fall into what Walt loves to say most of all on air, which is...
Well, it's your saying, not mine, but
I know, but
childhood is
cool
a hostage situation.
It is. Because what are you going to do? You have to hang on to the bond. And the sad thing
and
is
besides, where are you going to go?
Yeah,
right? A 14-year-old, right? Where's a 14 going to go? She's going to go to the farm in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Right. So
there you
see,
go.
we can't, we're wired to connect. We want to connect with our parents. We want to be loved by our parents. We want to hang on to that bond. And we will do so at all costs until we wake up, until we have an out, until we have some sense or a power to say. I think that was incredibly courageous of you to say, if you don't stop, I'm going to go. What did you say? Go to the newspaper or something?
To the press.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Because at that, and I guess divine intervention is my only explanation for that. Why I did that.
Well, it's very impressive. And I just want to say one thing about the mind map. The mind map is a psycho-spiritual model. I am a psychologist. I am spiritual at heart. And I think that for those of you who are spiritual in nature, and for those of you who aren't, it's okay, because it still works. The model still works. That we're wounded at childhood. That's what we encode. We encode negative core beliefs, and then we have to decode all that misinformation, and we have to shift people into healing, which is the recode. Encode, decode, recode. And if you look at it from a psycho-spiritual point of view, when people, places, and things fail us, as they say in AA, then, for those of you who believe in a source, creator, higher power, it's a sort of a sense of turning to a higher power beyond our human inability to get it right. and deferring to that higher power, because sometimes many times parents don't get it right. It's multi-generational, and so our job is to reboot the system, clean it out, reboot the system.
So, and it's definitely multi-generational in my case. I mean, my kids, as much as I've tried to get healthy and get a grip on this, have both, they're both have been horrifically impacted by it. They're 24 and 18, and both of them struggle with serious addictions.
That's the hole in the soul.
I'm trying to help them see the connection to their childhood.
Right. There's the hole in the soul. So I really appreciate you calling in. Thank you. I hope this conversation has helped to shed even more light on the struggles. And feel free to reach out to us. I've got an incredible team here that does mind map therapy. And so I know Walt has done a lot of research on gaslighting. So we're just going to go on and turn on the light and turn down the gas so that people don't choke, so to speak.
Stephanie, thanks so much for writing and calling in.
Yeah,
Appreciate
really
being part
appreciate
of the show.
it.
Thank
Call
you.
again sometime.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so turning
and there
up
it is, multi-generational, right? Her
Yeah,
stepdad, right? Then it was her,
Yeah.
and now as a result of that, she married a narcissist,
Yeah.
and then it impacted her kids.
Right, there it is. Okay, and how creepy that the stepfather was trying to convince her that they had a special kind of love,
surprising.
and he was training her to be a good future wife. Right.
Yeah, it's
such great training.
Can't encourage you guys enough to watch the movie Gaslight. It came out in 1944, has Ingrid Bergman in it. As you know, it was her first movie. No, Ingrid Bergman got her first Academy Award, and Angela Lansbury at 17 and then turned 18 during the filming was her first film. And
Charles Boyer.
And Charles Boyer was brilliant.
Directed by a Hungarian director,
yes,
George Cukor.
Yes.
And I know how to pronounce it because I actually speak Hungarian. So
yes, you do. And he did others, Philadelphia Story and a few other movies. So it's a classic, and some say it's one of the major films you need to see in your lifetime. So it's a great film. Last week we were talking about subtle signs of you being a victim of gaslighting. Wanted to continue that discussion. If you want to watch last week's show, we talked about you're often left feeling confused and crazy. You keep doubting yourself. You wonder if you're too sensitive or emotional, which we just got discussed a little bit with Stephanie. And you've become completely insecure. Classic sign is both partners are deeply insecure, but the victim's lack of confidence goes beyond her abuse, a lack of confidence. She literally loses herself and her identity and adopts the one from her significant other trying to feed her. So the next one is you find yourself saying you are sorry all the time.
And there's an example of wanting to keep the bond. And the person knows that you don't want to break the bond because they're capitalizing on that, whether it be the mother, the father, or some significant person to you. So they've got you. They've got you in the clutches of their hands, and so they can turn things on you because ultimately you don't want to go against them, because if you go against them, the fear is they're going to drop you.
Right, and then you got to start all over or be alone or whatever.
Right.
Do you walk on eggshells around? And obviously this is from a women's perspective, but do you walk around eggshells around your guy and wind up apologizing to him constantly? Do you feel like you're always in the wrong?
In the movie Gaslight, the husband is trying to drive the wife crazy because she has TMI on him, too much information, and he's trying to disqualify her as discredit her as a witness. And so the metaphor is that the person doing the gaslighting doesn't want the other person to be on to them. So what they're going to do is they're going to use the best defense, which is to be offensive and accuse the other person of being unfair or crazy or something, so that the person starts to question themselves. And it's kind of a form of projection because they're the ones being unfair. Okay, so rather than allow that other to direct that question mark back on them, they'll accuse that person of being that, so that they start running in the defensive mode and never turn around and say, wait a minute, isn't that you? Isn't that yourself that you're talking about? So it's a very interesting game of chess, and the gaslighter is pretty good at that game of chess, and the movie illustrates it beautifully.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because each piece of that movie unfolds into him questioning her and getting her to question
To admit.
herself. She keeps questioning herself because she wants to trust his better judgment, because that's her husband. She doesn't want to think that she's married to a bad husband. So just as Alice Miller says in her book, Prisoners of Childhood Trauma, Drama of the Gifted Child, the child would rather be in that good world and be the bad child and question him or herself than to think that she is surrounded by bad parents. So in this particular marriage, she doesn't want to see her husband as bad. So she starts questioning her own sanity until she gets what I like to call an enlightened witness. And so one of the main pathway or big pathway to mental health is to have somebody outside of the system say, hey, wait a minute, hold off here. You're not crazy. You're being made crazy. And so here are the facts. And being that I'm outside the system and I'm looking in and I could see things more clearly, it's evident to me that that person is self-motivated to manipulate you into thinking such and such and so and so. And until you have that outsider looking in and having a clear-sighted vision of what's going on, it gets really fuzzy and it gets very distorted. And depending on those wounds of childhood and what happens in the course of this, I call it the cracked lens of perception, because when we're wounded, we don't see psychologically clearly. And the people that know or did the wounding will capitalize on this. So it's really, really important to have that outside person looking in on your situation and giving you some objective feedback, whether it be a best friend or a therapist or some wise and trusted advisor, just somebody that is really clear-sighted and has no agenda other than having your best interest at heart. That's the person you want as your outside observer.
And along those lines, your arguments with him go in circles. If your fights make your head spin because of the outlandish things that he says, or that you did, or his way of distorting reality, and you honestly believe him when he says it all, and it's your fault, watch out.
So going back to the mind map, what's happening there is that the person is is on such an agenda that their membrane is not permeable to the truth. So whatever it is that you're saying, they're just on a one note. They're determined to be determined to make that point or to have you see it their way. So they're not really in a conversation with you. And so if you say B to their A, then there's no sense of they're considering your point of view, because your point of view is not to be regarded, because their point of view is the only thing that counts. So from their perspective, your point of view is going to be rejected. So if you go to panel number 7 for a moment in the mind map, paradigm 7 is about interconnection and paradigm shift and the phenomenon of two people bringing out the best in each other, two people empathically engaging with each other so they can have a third entity called truth or progress or empathy. But in the case of gaslighting, there is no panel 7, none at all. The only panel 7 that exists is a vampiring effect in that person wants that other to further their agenda. So instead of synergy and light, there's a lot of darkness and vampiring and crazy making, and so it never really progresses the system. And usually one goes crazy, and in the movie, which I really recommend that you see, the person is just going down the drain in this sense of self-questioning.
She fades quick. I mean,
Right.
once he gets his grips on her, for sure. And along the lines of saying you're sorry, you make excuses for him to your friends and family. If you find yourself explaining away your man's crazy, erratic behavior on a regular basis to those closest to you and making all sorts of excuses, it might be a sign that there's a much deeper problem at play.
And so why would a person do that? Remember all our episodes on people pleasing? Well,
Sure do.
These kinds of people love codependents.
Yeah.
They love people pleasers. They love empaths, kind hearts. Why? Because they can bleed them out better. They are juicier to suck the blood out of, so to speak.
And we've got another call.
Okay, great.
Hey, thanks for calling. You're on the couch with Dr. Judy and Walt.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. This is Eva calling from Sherman Oaks. Hello, Dr. Judy and Walt.
Hi,
how you
Eva.
doing?
Thanks for calling.
Very good, very good. Thank you for asking. I have a question. I've been trying to ask this question a couple of shows I'm watching, but I'm so fascinated with the topics. I just don't want to interrupt. And I love the callers. So much amazing information and to learn. I have a question. How come, let's say I was raised in a family, my mom, she was narcissistic, and so my sister, etc., etc. How come I am not narcissistic, however, she is? How come that works?
You mean how come your sister is and
Yes.
you're not? Oh,
Yes.
that's a very great question.
Yeah.
And remember our series on family dynamics, the way the parents treat the various children in the family system. One might be the scapegoat, and one might be the golden child, and one might be, let's see, what other ones do we have? The lost child and the mascot, okay? So depending on what your parents identified you with, you will be that projection process. So maybe one is the favorite, and that favorite is going to, so to speak, how do I like to put it? Blow smoke up your mother's narcissistic butt, so to speak, okay? So she's the chosen one, and so maybe you didn't do as good a job, or maybe you remind your mother, your father of their mother or their fathers. This is another common thing that we talk about, is that you're the hated one because you look just like
I was the
my
hated
mother.
one. Correct, yeah. She completely hated me, because
Okay.
I was like
There you
just like
go.
my father.
Because why?
Because I was just like my father, that's what she was saying to me.
Oh, well, there it is. Okay, so there's your explanation. So how come she treated your sister like this and she treated you like that? Because from her projective process, she identified you as just like your father. She apparently didn't like your father, so she was going to take her feelings that she couldn't really process with your father. I'm assuming he left early on. Is that right?
Actually, they pretty much stayed together until she decided to get divorced, because she did not want, the condo go into his name entirely, because she was about to die and she had a colon cancer. So she just, right before the death, she just want to make sure that, because when she dies, obviously the condo will go pretty much directly to my dad, and she didn't want to happen, so that's why she just divorced for that matter.
I see. Okay. So without knowing many of the details, apparently she identified you with him, and so she was going to punish him and punish the part of you that reminded her of him. And so you were the target, okay?
I see.
You see?
I see.
And so that's why you got that treatment, and your sister got the other kind of treatment. And so maybe because of the system gone wrong, it was a different system gone wrong in your case versus the system gone wrong with your sister. And nobody wins this game. Don't think that the golden child wins the game, because they don't, okay?
No,
and
they don't.
either way, everyone suffers their damage. And perhaps in your case, you didn't become the narcissist, meaning the person that was going to use other people for supply, because somehow along the journey, maybe you developed a different way of handling things. Maybe you developed more empathy.
Yes, that's true. Actually, that's true. That was my theory, but I was thinking to confirm with you, because since you're doctor, you actually know stuff, about this more than I did. I do at this point. I'm still learning. But this is what I was thinking to myself, because I was also the scapegoat. However, I was also appointed child to take care of everything in the house. Make sure that this person has this person has that. Make sure I'm taking care of that. Sister, the sister who is my, the golden child, chosen by my mom.
Yes.
So I had to always take care of her. And she was only a year younger than I. And I had to take care of her like she's 10 years younger than I.
Yeah.
So I always had to take care of someone.
Yeah. So the narcissistic injury was that the system got reversed. So rather than you being the child, you were the parent to the children, and this is one of the most injurious dynamics in a family. So the fact that you underwent this kind of you were at the effect of this piece of the system gone wrong, you probably became more of a people pleaser. You were, in other words, you were groomed to please the narcissist, okay?
True.
And so you're in treatment right now, correct?
Yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. And Dr. Veronica, she's fantastic. I love her.
Yeah, she's great, and so now you can connect all the dots and see that you were really groomed to please the narcissist, and so your job now is to step out of that role and say, enough. I'm not going to bleed out. I'm not going to be somebody's a leech. I'm going to have boundaries, and nobody's going to vampire me, and that's how you get healthy. So.
Yeah.
I really
that's I'm learning. Yeah, I'm learning slowly that this is what I need to do, because
absolutely,
that's very true. Actually, you tapped in a very important point. Yeah, that is exactly. I remember I always had to listen to my mom, stepmother. She would complain for years and years, and since I remember a little kid, she would, do the gaslighting type of thing, like you're just fucked up like your father, but yet she says, "Please give me some money because your stupid father's not helping us."
So,
I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me, all these bad things about me, but yet you want money from me.
Well, sure. So you were a narcissist's dream. You were a narcissist pleaser in training. You understand? So now you're no longer in training for narcissists to leech onto you and suck you dry. So, it's just always so nice to see you at the Psychological Healing Center. And I know I'm rushing around a lot, so I just want to give you a big hug.
Yeah.
And thank you.
And I do. I know. And you are just amazing, and I love your program. And
thanks,
Kevin and all these people. You just guys are amazing, of course. Thank you so much.
One thing before you leave us, Eve, I wanted to comment on. There's a book that I like to allude to. It's not really a psychological book, and it's certainly not a narcissist book, but the title of the book is called Looking Out for Number One. It's written by Robert Ringer years and years ago, and it was rewritten. And the bottom line is, if you don't look out for you, who is going to? If you don't promote yourself and like yourself, who really is going to?
Exactly. That's very true. That's very true. And I feel like I always have to please everybody. That's true, because that's from the childhood. That's very true. Yeah. My mom, she always do this to me. I always have to listen to her. I have nothing else to say. I couldn't say anything. I always have to say yes, and feel sorry for her. That's all I had to do.
So now you have a voice, and I've got to tell you, from the moment that I talked to you, from that original moment, it must have been, many, many months ago, you were in such a different place, and now I see you, and you're shining. That's the best way I could put it. So,
of course, it's a slow process, but I'm getting better, and I'm very thankful. And I mean, this program completely changed my life. I mean, I just can't believe how this program changed your therapy and how you create this program. I'm thankful to you and Dr. Veronica and Dr. and Walt for everything. It's been incredible, a huge eye-opening in my life. I mean, I'm a changed person.
Really,
well, Eva,
really,
thanks so
you
much.
for acknowledging that.
Seriously,
It
thanks for
means a
calling,
lot for everybody.
being a part of the show, being taking advantage of what's here and changing yourself.
Every Thursday.
Oh, well, thank you.
Something happens.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm like religious.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate that a lot.
Okay.
So we're gonna run, but
Thank
God
you
bless and thanks for calling.
in. Yes.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Okay. Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye.
I got a couple more here before we go to our song. You start lying to avoid the accusations and twisted talks. After a while, you get so tired of your version of events being mixed up and your reality being warped by the man you're with, you decide to start lying to avoid
or
woman. Yeah, but this is from a woman's perspective. I said earlier that you just start lying to him to avoid confrontation.
Right, and then you're accused of lying.
Yes.
Okay? So there's never a win-win situation
Well,
here.
one of the things here is interesting is on another one, it talks about they accuse you of things they're doing. You know, they accuse you of being a liar. They accuse you of being a cheater, and such not. You know, we got one call.
Caller?
One call. We're gonna
Okay, we'll keep it short.
Yeah,
Bring
hi,
it on. Yeah,
Oh, I think I lost him. Maybe they'll call back.
call back.
Yeah. Okay. Where is it? They accuse you of doing things they're doing. They project. They use a drug user or a cheater, yet you are constantly being accused of that, and they're obviously that themselves. So
And
projection in that regard
You're
is a big
always
deal.
on the run because it's you. So you're going like, oh, I must be, something's wrong with me because there's been 10 accusations.
Well,
so maybe like 2 of them are right. So you're
here's the
fending
last
for
one.
yourself.
Here's the last one then, along those lines.
Okay.
You feel hopeless and depressed in the relationship.
Yes.
How did this happen? You were head over heels for this guy, and now you're consumed by sadness and emptiness. Okay? And, it didn't get there overnight, and it was, they constantly, through repetition. Okay, they call back. Let's see here.
Right.
You've ended up there.
Okay.
Hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. We really only have a couple minutes, but we wanted to get you on. Thanks for calling.
Hi, this is Jennifer from Minneapolis.
Hi, Jennifer. How you doing?
Hi, great. I love your program, so I'm so
you.
happy to
Thank
get on
you.
and be able to speak to you.
Sure.
I have some similarities with your last caller. My mother sounds kind of the same. And it's interesting with the gaslighting because I'm an adult and my parents, I have to go see them soon, and I believe the gaslighting is still happening, so I don't want to see them.
Oh, understandable. Yeah. That's been a big
so,
topic. Contact versus no contact, limited contact. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I read this book called The Emotionally Absent Mother. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's by a therapist, and it just made me realize that what I've been given by my mother was never enough, and it's not really my fault.
That's right.
It was something that really just should have been there to begin with.
Okay.
But my parents have always presented her as this, I was always had to respect her. I was not allowed to challenge her. And she was this, God-fearing woman, and I was always wrong. I was, taking care of my sisters. Yeah. I was perfectionistic. And they still, they just never have been there for me. And so I'm just at this point in my life where I really see them for what they are, and I don't want to have anything to do with them.
Well, I think first step is seeing them for who they are and understanding that this is multi-generational. So it's not like they woke up one morning and decided to screw up your head, It's just that they are who they are, and now you have to play your life within or without this dynamics. And if you choose to go minimal contact or however you choose it, now it's time to put yourself number one, isn't it? Because people who are sick and use their children as their narcissistic supplies are not going to bring you any light. They're not going to bring you any more emotional, mental health. So in some cases, I'll say to my patients, go minimal contact because it's too harsh on you to cut it off, and in some cases they just have to cut it off because it makes them too sick. And so you have every right to do what's in your best interest. Do you have a really quick question? Because I know we're out of time. So go ahead and hit me up with your question. I'll see if I could quickly answer it.
Okay, yeah, I think I understand a lot about the gaslighting that I've received from my parents, but I've got little kids, and I already would say I'm at minimal contact, but, part of it has been the guilt that's been put on me my entire life for kind of just feeling like it's not been enough.
Okay, so
but I hate
that's
to take
the
that
hook.
away from my kids.
That's the hook in. Okay, so for I wish I had a lot more time to talk to you, but really what I want to say metaphorically is just give yourself permission to take the hook out of your mouth, okay, so that she can't string you along any longer.
Motivate you by
she
guilt.
She cannot motivate you, and swim free. And then take your power back, and then out of that place of power, then you can be the cause. Then you can make the decisions. You can set the boundary. And obviously, you know that I have a team of beautiful therapists on staff, and if you ever feel that the need to get free and clear of this, contact me, contact the team, and we'll do our magic to get you out of this psychological hellhole, so to speak, okay? And so in the meantime, just know that you have every right to protect yourself and every right to have a free life, okay?
Okay, I think I'm having a really hard time with just deciding that that's okay for me to not want to have a relationship with her.
They created it.
For my kids.
Yeah,
she created this.
Yeah, she created it, and what
Okay.
you're doing is boundaries.
Right.
You're, again, as I said to the previous caller, you're looking out for number one. In this case, you're not only looking out for yourself, you're looking out for your kids.
Right. And if you don't want to go no contact, you can go low contact and send her Mother's Day, happy birthday wishes, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you want to do. But just make sure that whatever you do, you don't self-injure. Okay? You don't inflict injury upon yourself. And that there are those the boundaries.
And as I like to say, you do not want to should on yourself.
Right.
SHOULD.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, thank you.
glad we
'cause
squeezed you in.
The behavior still continues, so that's where I finally.
Well, narcissists
tired-
don't
so
take
tired of it.
they don't
They're
take
not
no
gonna
for an answer.
change.
They're not
Right.
going to change.
Right.
They don't take no for an answer.
Right.
That's not in their vocabulary. So, tag you're it.
All right. Thank you
Okay.
for calling in.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks
God
for the
bless.
encouragement.
Okay. Of course.
Wow. Okay. Well, we have a special guest next week. We have one of the primo associates in the Psychological Healing Center. Is she still coming?
Actually, we're gonna
defer that?
We're gonna have her on in 2 weeks because she's going to be out of town for a little while.
Oh, okay.
And she wants to come on air, and I want to start introducing the staff to our audience, and every one of our staff members has so much light to give. They have their own area of specialty, so I'm asking my staff to bring on different topics that they think
Okay.
would shed light to the audience. And so we will have Jillian Sorkin on in a couple of weeks. And so
And next week is actually the first Thursday of the month. So
great. So we're going to have
free for
our
all calls.
Free for all calls.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
you can those of you that called, you can call back.
Absolutely.
or call again, or
Absolutely.
please call. And our number is 323-843-2826, and call next week. So
Yes.
we're going to have to rush to our song, which is a great one and a long one, and it's by Alanis Morissette, and it's entitled Narcissus.
So I wanted to find a song that really speaks to gaslighting. Couldn't find one, but we came across a song that speaks to narcissism.
Yeah, and in relation to the calls, I think this is apropos.
And I love Alanis Morissette.
man,
She's one of my
this
favorites.
is
So
loaded.
go ahead.
Dear Mama's Boy, I know you had your butt licked by your mother. I know you've enjoyed all that attention from her, and every woman graced with your presence afterward. Dear narcissist boy, I know you've never really apologized for anything. I know you've never really taken responsibility, and I know you never really listened to a woman.
Well, here's a dependent personality who seems to be the golden child of his mother, kind of joined at the hips by her, and she has made him into a person that really doesn't need to take any kind of responsibility for anything, because she's going to make sure that his poop doesn't smell ever. She's going to clean up the job all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Dear me, show boy. I know you're not really into conflict resolution or seeing both sides of every equation or having an uninterrupted conversation, and any talk of healthiness and any talk of connectiveness and any talk of resolving this leaves you running for the door.
Right. So this person is not exactly relationship material because the mother made sure that this person will never be relationship material, because like our first letter that we alluded to, this mother wants to make sure that this person doesn't hatch from the nest. So this person is just never gonna take responsibility for any of his health.
Why do I try to love you when you really don't want me to? Dear egotist boy, you never really had to suffer any consequences. You've never really stayed with anyone longer than 10 minutes, and you've never understood anyone showing resistance.
Well, why should he stay more than 10 minutes when there's another one for him to take or her to take narcissistic supply from?
Right, take her place immediately.
So,
Yep.
next, move on. There's no real connection being made.
Dear popular boy, I know you're used to getting everything so easily, a stranger to the concept of reciprocity. People honor boys like you in this society.
Well, there is no panel 7, which is interconnectivity and synergy, because in this case, the mother gave him all the supplies,
Everything.
And it seems like he's the golden boy. He doesn't have to do anything.
And any talk of selfishness, any talk...
Selflessness.
Yeehaw. Well, here you go.
Yeah.
Any talk of selflessness, any talk of working at this, and any talk of being of service leaves you running for the door. Why do I try to help you when you really don't want me to?
Well, here's a case of smothering. Okay, smothering, spoiling. This is one of the 5 injuries of childhood. So this person's been so smothered and so spoiled that they're completely useless when it comes to giving in relationships. They have no concept of reciprocity because mommy dearest did it all.
It's all about me.
Yeah.
You go back to the woman who will dance the dance. You go back to your friends who will lick your ass. You will go back to ignoring all the rest of us, and you go back to the center of your universe.
Because that's how he was positioned,
Yeah.
and there was no teaching insofar as you've got to work for it. You've got to earn the light. You've got to earn relationship. No concept of that.
That's what you think. Dear self-centered boy, I don't know why I still feel affected by you. I've never lasted very long with someone like you. I never did, although I have to admit I wanted to.
Okay, so here's a situation where it's hand in glove. This person's been narcissistically injured, so he or she is waiting to be esteemed by the golden child, and it's not coming. So whatever was created in that other person's dynamics is a direct function of why they're in this situation, begging for attention from the narcissist.
Dear magnetic boy, you've never been with anyone who doesn't take your shit. You've never been with anyone who dared to call you on it. I wonder how you'd be if someone were to call you on it.
Not good.
This isn't going to work for me. And any talk of willingness, any talk of both feet in, any talk of commitment leaves you running for the door.
Of course. Why should they commit when that means that they're going to have to work at it? They're going to have to give something of themselves. They're going to have to lose their vulnerability to another human being. Not a good deal.
No more narcissistic supply.
Oh, no.
And why do I try to change you when you really don't want me to? And then lastly, you go back to the women who dance the dance. You go back to your friends who lick your ass. You go back to being so oblivious. You go back to the center of the universe.
For those of you who feel like you've lost the game to a narcissist, let me tell you that you just dodged a bullet, because this person will never feed you. This person will never make you important enough. And so